how to set up for Smith machine glute bridges. Let's get into it. So first you're gonna find a bench that's about the height of your knee crease and then lower the bar on the Smith machine until it's approximately the same height. Load up your bar, grab a barbell pad for your hips, get your feet in position so that at the top of your bridge, your knee is in line with your heels. And then from here, we're gonna adjust the bench. Notice how I keep going back down and pushing it back until it's in the perfect position. The bench should be placed just below your shoulder blades and in a position where the bar is falling directly over top of your hip crease. But where is my hip crease, you ask? Go ahead and stand in the mirror, hinge at the hips. There she is. This is where we want the bar. For glute bridges, we are doing a smaller range of motion than hip thrusts in order to keep tension in the glutes throughout the movement. So we want to keep the knees in line with the heels the whole time. If your knees start traveling back towards your torso like I'm demonstrating here and coming out of that straight line with the heels, you're going too low. Make sure we keep the range of motion small and we end in a straight line from the knee to the hip to the shoulder. Now let's dive into some common mistakes. One of the most common being not getting into full hip extension at the top, so not finishing in that straight line from the knee to the hip to the shoulder. Notice that as I finish off my rep here, I still have some range of motion left in my hips. Now sometimes this happens just because someone is using way too much weight and they just can't muscle their way all the way up there. If that's the case, they need to drop the weight so they can get into full hip extension. But other times this is just a form issue and someone needs to tilt their pelvis posterior just slightly. So notice what I'm going to do with my pelvis here. When I give myself that slight posterior pelvic tilt, not over exaggerating, but just slight, it allows me to get to that nice neutral spine, that nice flat line at the top of the movement. It's going to keep the glutes nice and biased the entire time and keep the low back safe. Common mistake number 2 is looking up rather than keeping the chin tucked throughout this movement. We want double chins in glute bridges, okay? It's actually impossible to properly brace the core when we're looking up like this. So in order to keep the back safe, brace the core, get a nice solid contraction at the top, make sure to keep the chin tucked throughout. Lastly, one of the most common mistakes I see is flexing and extending through the spine rather than keeping the core braced and the back flat throughout the movement. We're biasing more low back than glutes when we do this, and we're putting ourselves into a prime position to hurt the low back. So instead, we want to imagine as if there is a board underneath our entire torso, and we are just pivoting on the edge of the bench.